So now, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker for tonight's meeting. Matthew Wandrie officially became superintendent of Lapeer Community School District on July 1st, I believe, of 2011. Now, this is something you all need to know, because this is noteworthy. When Matt took over this position, he had $8 million worth of debt in this district. Right now, there's no debt. So I think you can applaud for that. He came to Lapeer from Dearborn Public Schools, a district of 18,500 students, where he served as a director of human resources. His career in education also includes work as a high school teacher, an athletic coach, an assistant principal, an athletic director, and a principal. The Lake Orion High School graduate earned his bachelor's degree in history and political science from Alma College. He earned his master's degree from Eastern Michigan University in educational leadership and holds a kindergarten through 12th grade administrative certification. He currently is pursuing his doctorate in education at the University of Michigan. He and his wife, Christy, I hope I said that right, have 3 children, Thomas, Jack, and Anna. He enjoys coaching his children in the various athletic pursuits, spending time with family and friends, boating, fishing, and playing a guitar. If you want to do a solo tonight or something like that, you can do that. All right. I think we've got a guitar around here somewhere. All right. Well, Matt will be speaking tonight on the consolidation and future plans of the Lapeer School District and also on Common Core curriculum. Matt? We're glad to have Matt here with us tonight.
Well, that's without a doubt the most gracious introduction I've had in my 2-year tenure as superintendent, so thank you to the Tea Party for that. I appreciate it. I'll take all the compliments I can get. You know, when I began the job 2 years ago, it was a daunting task, to say the least. Anytime a superintendent or a superintendent candidate makes the decision to start identifying districts that he or she would like to manage, you need to do your due diligence in terms of research. And so I certainly knew that the job of Lapeer Community Schools Superintendent would be a big one, recognizing the debt issues that I saw in my research. There were some 40 available superintendent positions in the state of Michigan at the time that I applied for the Lapeer Community Schools job, and I only applied to 1 district. My mom and dad retired to Lapeer 5 years ago. I grew up 20 minutes south in Lake Orion, and have been in the area for over 30 years. I have a niece that attends the district, and so Lapeer has been a real special place in my family, and I knew that coming here I could make a difference. And in 2 short years, I'm proud to be a part of a team that has made some significant gains in the district, both financially and academically. But it's not been without challenge, and we certainly have had a very aggressive agenda the past 2 years. In my review of the district financials, I could see there were some very apparent things on the books that had not only put us in the situation we were in, but certainly, if not addressed quickly, would catapult us into bankruptcy, receivership, whatever category that you want to apply to that, but emergency management, to say the least. And so wanted to avoid that for our community because it's not a positive thing. I think we're all familiar with the stories of emergency management with local municipalities and school districts. That's a top 10 list you want to stay off of. So we did some very aggressive things. We first began to look at our union contracts and renegotiated each of them. And we were able to effectuate significant employee compensation reductions. That's number one. We're in a time where the local economy affects public entities. Public school districts do not operate within a bubble, and so we have a significant obligation to our communities whose economies are suffering to be responsible and responsive when talking about what we do with our wage and our employee benefit packages and how we manage personnel. Just so you know, this is a service industry. Okay, public education does not produce a product, so our major overhead cost is what? People. wages and benefits. So about 85% of our budget is just that, is wages and benefits. So that's the biggest slice of the pie. And if you want to make significant gains in elimination of debt and securing of long-term financial future, the only thing to do is look at the wage side. So we did that. From an efficiency perspective, we were very inefficient. Okay, we are a declining enrollment school district. The height of Lapeer Community Schools in 1980 and 81 was home to almost 9,000 students, kindergarten through 12th grade. We are below 6,000 as of 2013, and we are going to level out around 5,000 4 or 5 years from now. So our district has effectively been cut in half due to two primary factors. Number one, the unemployment rate in Lapeer County is still a killer, and our kids got to go with mom and dad because they're going to find jobs. We're not losing students to Imlay City, North Branch, Davison, and Oxford. We're losing kids to Texas and West Virginia and Florida, where the jobs are, and other states in the union. So the other factor is the declining birth rate. The birth rate in Lapeer County has declined 30% since the 80s. So the kids aren't being born, and the ones that are here are suffering the negative impact of our economy and leaving the state. The state of Michigan has lost 250,000 students in the last 10 years. Okay, so we are declining enrollment along with 70% of our counterparts in the state, of the 500 plus districts in Michigan. So we have a reaction to that reality. We can, kind of cry about it and whine about it, and oh, we're a declining enrollment district and we don't have as many kids as we used to, and gosh, wouldn't it be great if Lansing bailed us out, and wouldn't it be great if we got more money, and kind of the typical common reactions to these types of issues. Or we could kind of hunker down, identify what our weaknesses and inefficiencies were, and inwardly adjust and affect some of those problems. So we did two things. We readjusted our union contracts to get us in a more competitive and sustainable situation as it related to paying our employees. And number two, we closed some buildings. Okay, we closed 2 elementary schools in my first year, and we are on track to merge and close one of our 9-12 high schools by the fall of 2014-15. So operationally, we are much leaner than we've ever been because we are operating and we are educating fewer kids. All right, so we can no longer afford to keep the number of buildings open, and we can no longer afford to pay the competitive wage and benefit package that we used to. This is not a function of choice, but rather a function of our circumstance. And the only problem with that line of thinking is that if you continue to cut your way out of problems, okay, and you continue to focus on the negative things you don't have as an organization, not just public schools, but a company, a government entity, a local municipality, if all you do is cut, you're not going to deal with your primary issue, which is we need more students. Okay, our community needs more businesses. So I've spent the last 2 years focusing on ways that we can impact the local economy. So by creating a better school district and focusing on innovation and doing things differently, not the typical common answer, we can simultaneously reduce our burden, our debt burden, both short-term and long-term, but we also have to focus on attracting new families here, attracting more kids, because at the end of the day, we're funded based on a per pupil amount, and if I can get more students to come to Lapeer because what we're doing is unique and different, I can right this ship. Essentially right now, based on the differences between our incoming kindergarten class and our graduating seniors, we have a built-in loss of 200 kids a year for the next 5 years. Okay, just to equate that to a monetary amount, that's $1.5 million less in revenue every year for the next 5 years. So if that doesn't smack us in the face and say we better start coming up with a different way to do business, we can't just keep doing it the same old way, I really don't know what will wake us up. Any business owner that says, I've got $1.5 million shortfall on the revenue side for the next 5 years, that doesn't make an adjustment to that, is going to go out of business. Okay, so business owners like public school superintendents have two sides of the ledger to look at, right? The expenses and the revenue. So we have to minimize our expenses, and we got to raise our revenue. Well, the only way to raise your revenue in Michigan that's funded on a per pupil basis is to get more kids. So a lot of people have been wondering about this consolidation and the idea that Lapeer East and Lapeer West are going to be no more, and we're going to reunite the high school into one Lapeer High School. And there are a lot of concerns about that. Trust me, I'm the head of the line with the list of concerns. I certainly by no means think it's a panacea or going to fix all of our problems. What it is going to do is going to reduce our burden operationally by $1 million a year. It's going to allow us to offer more and better programs for our kids that remain. It's going to allow us to be a lot more efficient, operating 9 schools instead of 10. And we have 5 elementary schools in Lapeer. Okay, do you know as recently as 2007 we had 12? Okay, so we're losing that many kids. That population bubble is now high school age kids. Okay, if we do nothing and we keep East and West open, we're staring at having 2 750-kid high schools in about 3 or 4 years. All right, so essentially those buildings would be half full. Okay, and my challenge to you is, if you had a superintendent that didn't take on this issue now, would you support your tax dollars funding 2 half-empty high schools? You know, I hope the answer would be no. Okay, because if we're focused on fiscal responsibility and accountability, you know, this is a $50 million operation, none of which is my money. Okay, so I take that pretty seriously, that as a steward of taxpayer dollars, we better figure out the most efficient way to manage that money. And the most efficient way to manage that money is not to keep buildings open because people have a sentimental attachment to them. All right, that's a real big misstep. So we've done our due diligence in terms of talking to the community about what this is going to mean. All right, certainly you can't just look at this issue from a financial piece alone. Okay, because anytime you have a high schools, there is a sentimental attachment. There is value to it. There is a lot to be said for what those buildings and what those cultures mean to our community. So we're going to spend next year as a transition year that spends a lot of time saying goodbye, has some events for alumni to bring them into these buildings. But the bottom line remains is that we can't afford to do it any longer, and what do we want to achieve? Do we want to have buildings for our kids, or do we want to have great programs for our kids? So one of the things that the reduction in our deficit doesn't address is that, you know, we've not cut one student program, and that's really important to us. Okay, a lot of districts, and I don't want to be critical of my colleagues, but a lot of districts look first to what are things that we can eliminate for kids. Let's cut our athletic program. Let's cut funding for the arts. Let's charge kids more to participate in extracurricular activities. Let's increase their parking fees. All right? They look to eliminate things that directly impact kids. Okay, we're actually adding programs. Okay, we added a virtual learning center right next door here at Maple Grove Elementary School. We partner with Community Mental Health. We're operating that building on a lease basis with Community Mental Health. Costs the district absolutely $0 a year to maintain and operate, and we provide virtual learning for many of our homeschool families. And our current students also access that opportunity. We converted Turl Elementary into a year-round program, did that in less than 6 months. From idea conception to fruition, and we had over 500 families that wanted to participate in that program. We are going to be the first school district in the state of Michigan to offer year-round middle school starting in 2013, and a portion of our student body, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders at Rowan Warner next fall are going to be year-round students. We're going to be the first district in the state to offer K through 8 year-round school as a choice for people, not as a mandate, but as a choice. So if you want it, great, sign up. We'll figure out a way to make it happen for you. So with those types of innovations happening, we're very excited about what the future brings. The third thing that is really going to be impactful for our community is a new agreement that we just entered into with Mott Community College and U of M Flint. Public high schools for years have offered what are called dual enrollment classes, where you can actually sign up for and achieve college credit as part of your high school experience. There's 2 ways to do that. We have advanced placement courses that our teachers teach, and we have dual enrollment opportunities that are taught by actual college professors. Only problem is if you sign up for dual enrollment, it's really centered around the schedule of the institution that you're going to. So if U of M Flint offers the course you want your child to attend on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday evenings from 7 to 9, well, I hope that works with your schedule. I hope you can get transportation there, and hopefully there's no other conflicts, okay? Unfortunately, a lot of times that precludes kids from doing it because it conflicts with athletics, a job, maybe the family only has one car, and driving to Flint 3 nights a week is just not part of the family dynamic. So what we've done is we have invited U of M Flint and Mott Community College professors to come inside of our buildings, inside our school day, and actually offer dual enrollment courses for our Lapeer kids. So we are coming out with a new goal that says our top 25% of students in Lapeer that graduate can leave our door with a minimum of 12 college credits, a minimum. There is no maximum. The next 25% of our students can leave high school with 6 credits. And the bottom 50% of our students in terms of performance can leave with somewhere between 3 and 6 college credits paid for by the school district. Okay? That is a tangible value of our diploma. So when people start asking you, what's the difference between Lapeer Community Schools or North Branch or Imlay or Davison or Oxford, say, Lapeer Community Schools is committed to helping you financially and academically make it to the next level. Because a lot of times it's not a lack of desire that prevents kids from going to college, it's a lack of finances. Okay? Did you know that 12 college credits at U of M Flint cost $5,500 on average? All right? So a half a year's worth of schooling costs $5,500. So let's say you send your kid and you commit to sending your son, daughter, granddaughter, grandson to college for a year. It's $11,000 gamble, right? $11,000 gamble that they'll figure out what they want to do in their course of study and pursue that for the next 3 years and graduate with a degree. Well, raise your hand if you're one of those parents or grandparents that got that fateful call. Mom, Dad, I think I want to change my major. Okay, so while Johnny's out finding himself, you're recalculating, okay, what the heck is this going to cost me now? I hope this new major is really in your wheelhouse, okay? We know students at 18, 19 years old, heck, there's some adults that don't know what they want to do when they grow up, right? But yet, it's a huge cost to families for young people to figure that out, especially in a time when the U.S. Chamber of Commerce says that a 2013 high school graduate will have an average of 9 different jobs in their 30-year work life. Okay, now that's not 9 different jobs in the same industry. Okay, that's not like I was an engineer at Ford and then I went over to GM. No, this is 9 different industries. Okay, so what we're preparing kids for is no longer a 30-year career at the mill. Okay, it's not a 30-year career as a teacher. It's not a 30-year career in any industry. It's got to be a skills-based approach to how we teach and educate our kids. So what I want to do for our families is say, let us help you help your child figure out what they want to do. And let's do it in an environment where they're at home. So if they're a senior in high school and they're taking dual enrollment credits and they're attacking that very rigorous college curriculum, do it in an environment where they've got you, they've got a great support network, and it's not costing you $11,000 to figure it out. All right? Right now, we've got the price for 12 credits at U of M Flint below $500. So we're going to provide the transportation. We're going to provide the access. We're going to provide the books, the tuition, the professor. For 12 credits, all you got to do is kick in $500. And it's a $5,500 value to our families. And we're working right now with groups like the Community Foundation, the Chamber Economic Club, to donate to get that price down to zero. Because I don't want any kid to not do it because they can't afford it, because $500 is still a heck of a lot of money to a lot of our families. Okay? So those are the things that reducing our wage and benefit packages and closing school buildings can help fund. And that's far better opportunity than we realized before. Is it different? Yes. Is it hard when the neighborhood elementary school closes down? Absolutely. There's a lot of people in this room that dealt with that pain as we've gotten smaller and smaller. Is losing the identity of one of our two of our high schools a difficult thing to manage and process? Absolutely. But we have to ask ourselves, what is the contrary? What is the contrast? What is the alternative to that decision? Now, we could hold on. I could hold on to East and West for a couple more years. And I can guarantee you that we're cutting through the meat, through the fat, and into the bone. And if we're willing to give up other services that the district provides, I can hold on to those 2 brick-and-mortar facilities for 7, 8, 9 more years. I can guarantee you won't like the district we've become as a result of making that decision. So I made a decision to very aggressively go after this move with our board. Our board unanimously supported the merger of our 2 high schools, and that was just the beginning. We haven't even gotten to first base yet, okay, because the work of consolidating and bringing these 2 cultures together is the real work ahead, all right? And as excited as I am about all the academic improvements, about the fact that we've been able to right our financial ship, I still spend most of my time fielding questions about these 2 issues. Matt, what will the new high school colors be, and what's the mascot? So I put it to you this evening to see me in the back of the room and tell me what your opinion is, because everyone else wants to tell me what their opinion is. So I also want to say that I am not going to be the man that makes that decision. I am very, very happily going to shift that responsibility to the board and acquiesce my authority as a superintendent and make it their fault. So just full disclosure. But this is a tough issue. You know, this is a tough issue. And Lapeer was once a one high school town, and we're going to go back to that. And there's no shame in that. Okay, embracing this change is something that, although difficult to do, is something that is a function of life. And the one thing that I've been really proud of in the discourse that's happened at the community forum level is that shouldn't we as adults have a goal that says when we deal with adversity and change, which none of us are immune from, that our students can look to us and say, that's what adults are supposed to act like when adversity happens. And that's really what an educator, what a parent, what a pastor or priest or community member or local political organization, that's the goal you should have for what happens in our community. So our kids are watching us. Our kids are watching me, they're watching you, and how we act in political discourse and discourse relative to local issues like public schools. Okay? And are we going to be pounding the podium, swearing and yelling, attacking people personally, or are we really going to take the issues to heart and debate them in a way that's proactive, that's civil, and that gets to the heart of the issue? And I can tell you what, managing these board meetings for the past 2 years as we've brought this issue up, I can tell you it's been nothing short of that. That the standard that we've set for this discourse has been maintained by people in our community. And that's not the same everywhere. It took the community of Bloomfield Hills 9 years to deal with the issue of merging their 2 high schools. It took Royal Oak around 7. We did it in a year and a half. Okay? We did so because our community, although troubled by this issue, because it's a tough decision to make, it wasn't sprung on anyone. Okay, it's been something that's been talked about in the back channels on Lapeer for a number of years, but we did this in a year and a half, and now we have all this time to kind of put some of the hard talks behind us and focus on the merger and the transition and the healing that can happen as a result of the decision that's been made. So it's been a great process to lead and be a part of, and although a tough time in our community's history, I think we're going to emerge, I know we're going to emerge as a much stronger district, a lighthouse district, a destination place when people start, young families start making a decision about where do we want to move, and they start seeing things like our Lapeer promise, our guarantee of a minimum of 12 college credits, of innovative learning, of new and improved facilities that we're working on right now, okay, and the maintenance of a really well-run school district that's financially stable, that's academically innovative. Guess what? Those families are going to bring with them new businesses, new construction, okay, and a thriving downtown that has been absent for a while. So instead of sitting around as a public school district and waiting for the economy to turn around so we can reap the benefits, we're going to take a different approach. We're going to be the catalyst for change. We're going to be leaders that bring the economy in Lapeer back. Okay, and I'd love to be the superintendent presiding over a district that helped lower the unemployment rate in the county, because that's never happened before. Okay, those are the kind of aggressive things that we're talking about, and it's also time to start talking about global competition. All right, we're not talking anymore about being content with being average. Okay, good enough is not good enough. We can be a great school district, we can be globally competitive, we can prepare our kids to compete in a world that has an ever-increasing amount of demands on them in the workforce that we never had to prepare for. All right. Now, I was also asked to comment on the Common Core. I know you had a speaker at your last meeting, which I was invited to, and I apologize for being absent. And I'll give you a brief 2-minute take on the Common Core, and then I'll field some questions. Before I get to that, I would be remiss if I didn't offer my thanks to the Tea Party group for their recent contribution of a scholarship for one of our deserving students. We very much appreciate your financial support to helping one of our kids make it to the next level. But the Common Core, very simply, my mind has changed on this issue in the past several years of dealing with it. I know there's a great deal of resistance and a lot of political fervor around this issue, and I really wanted to just talk about some of the factual things relative to the Common Core standards, some of the myths that are out there. I'll give you my take as a local educator. I'm by no means a Common Core cheerleader. But I'm not on the other side either. I do see some benefit and value in it. First of all, what it is not, okay? It is not a curriculum. It is not a federal mandated series of things that must be taught to our kids, okay? It is simply a set of standards, a guiding post, if you will, about where our kids should be in particular grade levels, in particular subject areas. Okay, so it pales in comparison to our European counterparts, who we're often compared to, and I even heard mentioned as recently today about the woeful academic performance of U.S. students in comparison to Europe. And several countries are named frequently, okay, Finland, Sweden, and then even over in Asia with China and Japan. Well, one thing that all of those places have in common is a nationalized curriculum. Okay, so my caution to people that don't support the Common Core is, be careful what you wish for, because if we're leaning towards a European or an Asian model, what they do have is a nationalized curriculum that is very dictatorial in terms of abandoning any semblance of local influence, and it is a nationalized curriculum. The Common Core is not that, all right? It is a set of standards that says a second grader in the United States of America should know these basic things. We have assessment tools or tests that can tell us if they've achieved that based on where they go to school. So the issue of local control is not compromised in two pretty significant areas. Number one, we can still determine the curriculum and determine the texts and materials that we use to teach it. Okay? So that's a good thing. All right? Another thing to remember about the Common Core is that ACT, all right, the placement test that is most commonly used nationally, whether you're a homeschool, whether you're a public school or private school kid, the ACT is a nationally normed placement test that is an indicator of how successful a student will be with college freshman level coursework. That's all the ACT is designed to do. It has emerged as a national standard, if you will, about where school districts are at and where states are at. ACT had a seat at the table in establishing the Common Core, and it was their recommendation that having an articulated set of standards all the way up would help students be more successful in the ACT. Okay? One thing that sets Michigan apart from many states is that every single third-year high school student in the state of Michigan takes the ACT. Every kid. Whether they have plans to go into college, plans to go in the military, or plans that's their last day of school, every single student in Michigan takes the test. That's not how it used to be. People lament Michigan's drop relative to other states, saying, man, our education system is really failing our kids. We used to be in the top 20 in terms of average ACT score. Now we're in the 40s, in the high 30s somewhere. What happened? Well, it's simply a function of math. The more people that take something, okay, the lower the average score goes. We're still compared to other states whose college-bound students are the only ones taking the ACT. Okay, I'm not making excuses. I'm just telling you these are the facts of what's happening. All right. Furthermore, the Common Core is not a federal mandate. The Governors Association is who recommended this. If you really want to know, it happened back first Bush, and when Clinton was governor of Arkansas, he had some leadership in the Governors Association. First Bush had obviously work at the national level, and there was some discussion about Common Core relative to that. So it was a bipartisan bill, or bipartisan approach, and the Governors Association endorsed it and brought it to fruition. It was actually designed by a gentleman named Daniel Coleman, who is now the president of the Advanced Placement College Board. Okay, so the organization that oversees advanced placement curriculum and testing, okay, for some of our high-achieving students, actually helped to establish the Common Core. We certainly understand, I certainly understand the resistance as it relates to what appears to have some semblance of federal influence as it relates to education. When I first began as an administrator, I was completely opposed to anything that had a federal stamp on it. Most of them came in the form of unfunded mandates, and the one thing I didn't need any more of as an administrator was an unfunded mandate. But my thinking has progressed a little bit on this issue, and I'll tell you the number one reason why. Any NASCAR fans in the audience? 4. Okay, so this example will be meaningful to 4 of you, and the rest can just check back in when I'm done. NASCAR or stock car racing is designed within certain specifications that every single automobile competing in the race is almost exact. Okay, and the mitigating factor that determines first place versus last place is the talent and skill of the driver and his team. All right, but the tool that they're using is common. Okay, in the sense that it's the same, down to the ounce, millimeter, whatever. If we looked at American education in terms of a NASCAR race, okay, and each state was assigned a car, and we were at the starting line, you couldn't even tell what kind of vehicle we were in. One person would be in an Indy car, one person would be in my Dodge Charger, one person would be in your pickup truck. Heck, we'd be on different tracks, different start times, different end times, different teams. We'd be all over the map. Because every state, to a certain degree, has the ability to determine curriculum, testing standards, pacing, graduation requirements, everything in between. So we talk about how poor America does competitively relative to European nations and Asia. Now that's an emerging market. But yet we have no national standard that each state can judge itself against. All right. So the Common Core just simply seeks to unify what we're doing, okay, without taking away the idea that local school boards and states can still determine the most important things to us: the actual curriculum itself, the textbooks our kids are reading, the types of things that are being taught. All right. So my approach to this would be significantly different if the federal government was saying this is the approved national curriculum, and we're mandating that all states subscribe to it, irrespective of your personal, political, state rights beliefs. This is it, take it or leave it. I wouldn't be up here supporting that, because I don't support that. All right, what I do support, however, is the idea that we can measure our students based on a common set of standards, okay, and have the same endpoints, like things like the ACT at the end, to say, did Michigan do a good job versus these standards compared to Ohio? So if we're NASCAR drivers and we all have the same set of standards and the same specifications, the only thing limiting us from making significant improvements would be our leaders, our teachers, our parents. We would have to figure out how to do it better to achieve our goal of student success. So that's neither neither support nor a resistance to the core. I understand where the problems lie, but I also see some benefits as well. So with that, I'm open to any questions as it relates to the merger, school business, or the Common Core. Yes, sir.
It would seem that homeschooling, which has grown in Lapeer County, would be a good target in terms of That's my question. Basically, it has to do with homeschooling. And a lot of people think they know how many homeschoolers there are in Lapeer County, but I personally don't believe very many people do understand just how many homeschoolers there are. And so I guess my question would be, do we know?
That's a great question. That is, to use your first question, that'd be a great target, and you're 100% right. What's traditionally been the relationship, unfortunately, between homeschoolers and public schools has been a bad relationship. Okay, and for a variety of reasons, the fault of both sides, there's been a real lack of connection. And so I have, in the past 2 years, met with over 10 homeschool leaders in the community, both individual parents and folks that also sponsor organizations that homeschool large numbers of people, and just simply asked, A, what are we doing wrong, okay, or what are other private schools or charter schools doing wrong? What are services that we can provide that you would find appealing, okay? And I'll be very honest with you, one of the biggest reasons for the creation of the Virtual Learning Center at Maple Grove was the eventual growth of that program to be what we're terming a homeschool high school, okay, to where our homeschool families can have easier, better access to our facilities and programs, and that's a mutually beneficial relationship. And I'm very honest with people about that. The more services that homeschool families access through public schools, the more money we get as a result of it. So, but we're doing it for two reasons. Number one, Lapeer Community Schools is the largest educational institution in the county. So we got a pretty big responsibility here. And are we going to say, with that responsibility, well, we're only worried about the kids whose parents decide to come to us. Nobody else's kids matter. To me, that's a pretty immature response. We have taxpayer dollars. Okay, and last time I checked, homeschool families pay their taxes, okay? What relationship can we establish with them? As great or as small as they choose, okay? So, for example, you can still homeschool your child, and 100% of their education can be through the Virtual Learning Center at Lapeer Community Schools, okay? Or you can take one class through us, or any option in between. So it's going to take some time, because, and the reason I spoke to the relationship that's been long-lasting is because this is not something that's going to happen overnight. Our homeschool parents are skeptical, sometime for good reasons, sometime for not. And it's a matter of having that conversation, kind of breaking down some of those barriers about what can we do to help you. And I'll be honest with you, a family that's grown frustrated with formal education, so much so to the point that they've decided to pull their children out, okay? I've asked our people this question. Aren't those the kind of families that we want to attract to Lapeer Community Schools? They're that committed to their kids' education, they're willing to make those kind of sacrifices for their kids. So why don't we focus on it from a customer service perspective and start asking questions about what we can do to reattract those families, because they are in our midst, and we estimate somewhere between 800 and 1,000 students that reside in Lapeer Community Schools that do not attend St. Paul's, Bishop Kelly, Chatfield, or Lapeer Community Schools. Okay, that's a ripe picking field, if you will, to reintroduce formal education to these families. And the way that I look at it is, the analogy I use is, you want those families to kind of dip their big toe into the cold pool, right? They're not going to jump in, okay? They've had some bad relationships with public schools, formal education. We got to kind of invite them back in slowly, and I think once that happens, it's going to be a great relationship for both. There are a couple local examples of, not local, but statewide examples of local school districts that have invited homeschool families in really aggressive ways, and it has been a great thing. I've seen it happen where 200-300 kids are back in the school system, but they maintain their autonomy as homeschool family. So, for example, I told our homeschool parents, I'm not here to manage your child's education. If you want that role, take it. But if you can come to me for a portion of their education, I won't tell you what you have to do with the rest. Okay, and that's the key. The key is if you only want to come and take an advanced placement science course at Lapeer Community Schools, I'm not going to tell you what you need to do the other 6 hours of the day. All right, that's where the relationship begins, which is we're not here to somehow get people here and then lure them back in and trap them and go in the back door and, oh, we tricked you, you're a Lapeer Community Schools kid. It really is an option, one that you can use as little or as much as you select. Great question.
If you can come up here, or
You got.
we have a question here in the back. And then you.
Hi, thank you for coming and talking to us, and I applaud what you've done so far with the school. It's a nice job. My questions are pretty much concerning Common Core.
Okay.
Just a couple. You mentioned earlier that this was not a federal mandate, but it sure sounds to me like that's what it's going to be.
Yeah.
And I also think that any time the federal government is sponsoring and behind something like it is this, eventually they end up trying to control it. Mm-hmm. And that concerns me. My other issue is I'm hearing things about like data mining for the kids. You know, the information on the kids is going to end up going to the federal government in some form, and that scares me a little bit. So can you explain how this isn't going to happen?
Sure,
again,
sure.
please?
Well, you know, I'm a smart guy, but I don't get into the business of guaranteeing what the feds are going to do and not do. That's probably a scary business. The one thing that I take a lot of solace in is that one of the most secure and oldest forms of local leadership is a public school board. Okay, it's well established in our society, not just in Michigan, but nationally, that local school board is the smallest and most accessible form of local government in our country, and I think, you know, that's a good thing. One of the problems, my least favorite amendment is the 17th Amendment. Who knows what the 17th Amendment was? This is a quiz. I used to be a history teacher, so Bill, you knew I was going to ask a question. 17th Amendment, U.S. senators used to be appointed by state legislators. 17th Amendment abandoned that principle and made the U.S. senators popularly elected. Okay, so what that essentially did is divorce the issue of states' rights, all right, officially from the federal government's conscience, because everybody was a federally or at least statewide based on a statewide electorate. And the state legislatures reserved, prior to the 17th Amendment, significant levels of control in the U.S. Senate because that person had better be responsive to states' rights issues because they were appointed members of that body. And so with the erosion of states' rights issues, I grow increasingly concerned, as you do, about the federal government's control in what I had always thought was a states' rights issue. Okay. Now, in my 15-year education career, I have gone from a strictly local control guy to where I'm at, you know, on, what's the date today? The 5th of 2013. 4th, see, you can't trust me, I don't even know what day it is, of considering the idea that if we don't have a national identity of some kind as it relates to how 50 different states choose to educate their kids, this whole idea of where we compete nationally and internationally, we're never going to get there. So it's, my response is we need to pick our poison, okay? If we're okay with, because I mean, do public schools have a large responsibility to bear for the plight of American education? Absolutely. You know, step right up and everybody take your place in line about how this thing got messed up. Okay? Are there other factors that have significantly contributed to public education's ineffectiveness? Yes. We're not here to get into all that tonight. Okay? But we're all culpable to a certain degree. The question remains, if local control that we've had in place for how many years, isn't the answer relative to getting us where we want to be on a national scale. I'm not sitting here saying that federal control is the answer. I'm not saying that at all. But if it's a function of the fact that we're all going in 50 different directions and we're just disjointed, and it's just simply a matter of getting us pointing in the same direction, okay, I think that's worth a shot. I also open these comments by saying, because the local school board is the oldest, strongest, and most accessible form of local government, I don't see the feds coming in and getting away with, okay, controlling the 18,000 school districts in the nation. Okay, they can't control the 100 federal agents they have in the IRS, right? Okay, so you're looking at literally ripping from the teeth of America what they hold most dear. Yeah, that's going to be a fight to the death. All right, we're about to approve a new advanced placement government textbook. You know that our board policy has that go through a minimum 2-week waiting period where that's on display for anybody in this room or the community that wants to take a look at it and offer public comment on whether or not you think that textbook is good or not. That kind of stuff isn't going away. And the Common Core doesn't seek to replace school board's ability to make those kinds of decisions. And what's a school board? A representative body of government that represents people in this room. So my fear is lessened by the fact that school boards are established and strong. Our desire to maintain what our kids are reading and being taught every day is not going to diminish as a nation, regardless of the standards we choose. And I still want to ask you this. If it were a national curriculum telling us what we had to teach, I wouldn't be supporting it. But a set of standards that simply articulate on a national scale, a third grader in Michigan should know this about math by the time they're done. To me, that isn't as dangerous of a proposition as being mandated by the feds exactly how and what will be taught in our classrooms.
That becomes what they teach. If they have a standard that they're testing, then, well, the child needs to know that standard, and that becomes what they teach.
Has anybody, and I would just simply challenge you to read the Common Core standards. You'll find that it's not some foreign language, that it is not something that abstractly different, and in many cases it's very, very similar to what we currently do. So I would agree with you if it were completely this radical set of ideas that did not relate to what we're currently doing. That just isn't the case. I just go on Common Core, type in the website, you can find a list of standards. They're right there for everyone to see.
All right, we have a question here.
Yes.
Hi. I've currently homeschooled for 19 years.
Okay.
No offense, but my children won't ever be in school. I'm almost done. But I have many family members that teach in the public school. And what they are telling me is, oh, hold it up close. Oh, great. The problem is, the more standards you pile on these teachers, they are teaching to the test. And you know what really drives me nuts about this when we're compared to, Japan and all those?
Yeah.
Most people don't know it, but in Japan, not every kid gets the same education.
Right.
We're compared to the best of Japan. Mm-hmm. And that really makes me mad because, we're trying to keep up with a select group.
Yes.
When in America, everybody gets an education. It doesn't matter who they are.
That's right.
And so I think sometimes we've got to take our eyes off comparing us to some nation that handpicks the people who are going to be the best and leaves the rest outside.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we need to forget that and really concentrate on our children inside.
Yeah.
And when I have teachers telling me that they only teach what's on the test, mm-hmm. we will never be competitive. And so now you add more standards and you tie those teachers' hands, it just seems crazy to me.
Well, it's a great point, two of which I agree with. Common Core is actually less number of standards than what we currently have in the Michigan Merit Curriculum. So it gets back to that idea of, and I don't want to get, this is a complex issue, so we can't deduce it down. Two things. I agree with the whole idea of the international comparisons. I agree. Public education is a great thing. I mean, we take any student, any ability level, any family situation, and say, you know what, we're going to do our best. Sometimes our best isn't good, and sometimes our best is life-changing, okay, and everything in between. How many children do you have?
I have 3 daughters.
Okay. Are they all the same?
Nope.
No, they're kind of different,
I've
right?
changed the curriculum for each
That's right.
one of them. So.
And you've made adaptations
Yeah.
as they've changed, okay. And the fluidity and the flexibility you have in doing that is one of the real big benefits of homeschooling, right? You're not worried about 500 kids. You're worried about 3. And who's going to be a better teacher for your kids than a parent? Okay. So I don't disagree with any of those points. But the Common Core agrees with you in the sense that we have too much stuff we're cramming at kids. I'm going to give you an example. It used to be believed that what Michigan education lacked was rigor. Okay. When I was a high school graduate, raise your hand if you went to high school in Michigan. Okay. Do you know that each one of you graduated with one requirement to graduate from high school? You needed a half credit of U.S. civics to leave high school. The rest of your high school curriculum was up to you. Okay. That's no longer the case, so we implemented the Michigan Merit Curriculum several years ago, and with that came hundreds of standards, hundreds of what are, grade level indicators, and really put teachers into a flood wave of thousands of things they had to kind of sift through. The problem is our ACT scores haven't risen, okay, as the rigor has risen, meaning more kids are taking dual enrollment courses, more kids are taking advanced placement courses than ever. You'd think we'd see an increase in scores. Well, the problem is the ACT, if that's the test we're using, and your children will use it to get into college as well, 80% of the math on the ACT is pre-algebra and algebra. Well, if I've got juniors that are taking advanced placement calculus, what they learned in 7th or 8th grade is a distant, foggy memory. So the Common Core's reaction to that is more depth into some of those basic concepts and understanding, and less worry about just racing kids through a prescribed curriculum to get them to advanced placement, rocket science by the time they're seniors. Because we're not doing our kids a service by getting them to that rigor, which is important, but leaving behind the basics. So they actually agree with you on that issue, which is less is more.
I just have one more thing. Have you ever looked at Kalamazoo and how they have done it? And I only say it, not that I'm not a big fan of public school.
The Kalamazoo Promise, is that what you're referring to? Yeah.
But I'm a big fan of my community, and so if we can bring more people in and make the businesses better, I'm a big fan of that. Is there a way we could do that here with partnering with U of M or Mott Community?
That's what we're looking into, because the outgrowth of the 12 college credits is now, I haven't figured out a way how you guarantee 4-year public education, but I'm starting with a half a year. One back here, I think, or one up here.
I graduated from Detroit, the appalling school district of Detroit. I bring up the point that I think I'm loud enough.
I can hear you.
Yeah, I graduated. I consider myself having a better education in the Detroit public school system in 8th grade than my kids had graduating high school in this county.
Mm-hmm.
Common Core sounds great when you're dealing with science, mathematics, stuff that's subjective. It's just what you're seeing, it doesn't change. What I have, everything I've heard about Common Core, oh my God, we don't care enough about George Washington, Jefferson, they were slaveholders, so they take them out of the textbooks. You get too much of this crap that goes on with these social engineers that want to take out history is history, good or bad. Those were the founding fathers. Let's take George Washington and Thomas Jefferson out. Let's put some small person that did some little insignificant thing in place of them.
Yeah.
That's what I see wrong with Common Core.
Well, Common Core deals with language arts and math. Okay, so there's no set of social studies standards that are addressed in the core. What we're dealing with, I challenge everybody, take a look at some of the current standards that are under state control or local control. And some of the issues that you described, sir, are a problem we're dealing with right now without the Common Core as part of the equation. Okay, with the absence of things like the Founders, the Bill of Rights, constitutional principles. Okay, those things are happening right now in Michigan, in this county, in this area, minus the Common Core. An extraction of the things that we hold dear. I'm a history major, I hear you. Okay, so if the local entities that are charged with making these kinds of decisions aren't making them when they have all the authority in the world to do it, having a Common Core standards is not going to change that. And again, I'm not up here saying Common Core bust. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying learn it, understand it, take some time to investigate what it is, and know what they're recommending and know what the standards are, because I have to do that, and I have to be well versed in these things. But if we're going to resist it, we need to know the why, and that's all I'm saying. Because what you just described, that example you gave, is happening in districts across the nation right now. Without the Common Core, yeah, it's happening.
Matt, Roger Harris. First of all, I want to thank you for coming. I thought it was a great presentation. You convinced me, a skeptic, that the consolidation of the two high schools is a good idea, and I applaud you for making the tough decisions to make that happen. On the Common Core, though, the analogy you use about NASCAR, I think is really right on, and that what you're saying is that if you set up a set of standards that's this narrow, that everybody is going to try to achieve those standards. And right now in our country, we've got 18,000, if you're right, school districts that all have the opportunity to investigate different alternatives, set up schools like you did here at Maple Grove, whatever the different alternatives are. And you have all of those different laboratories to see which one is best and which one brings the bright and best students forward. And by setting up federal standards, which will be ultimately controlled by the federal government because of their money pull, I think you end up really narrowing what the choices are. And that's why I believe that you really want to press for the alternatives rather than the narrow standard.
That's a great point. That is a great point. I mean, anytime you subscribe to something that sets barriers or sets standards, it does limit options, and that's kind of the question I posed earlier. This gentleman's question about let's pick our poison. Is our main concern competing with Japan and Finland and Sweden, or is our main concern providing a local education that we deem appropriate, that's challenging and rigorous for our kids? Okay, I'm not a fan of globalism from the sense that we have to compromise our sovereignty as a nation to just give in to the idea that we're all citizens of the world. Okay, I don't subscribe to that idea. I mean, I still believe, as I think many of you do, that this still is the greatest place in the world to live. Okay, yeah. America's great for a lot of reasons. Our education system is one of them. Okay, but beyond that, it's great because of the American family, and we'd be remiss if we didn't mention the fact that the erosion of the American family has had a significant impact on our nation, economically and educationally. Okay, where we don't have the support networks that generations of Americans were used to because of many different circumstances, okay? And so again, my challenge to the community is this: we know these things exist, and we have a responsibility to react to that, and we can do it in one of two ways. We can point fingers and assign blame to all the variables that we have no control over, okay? Well, personally, my ego is too big to sit here and say that I have no control over these circumstances and I can't affect change. But my ego is small enough to recognize that I don't have all the power and I'm not omnipotent to the point where I can just wave my magic education and want to make all these problems go away. The federal piece concerns me from the limitation perspective, because what I see happening in education is a minimization of things that we hold near and dear. Things like the arts, things like physical education, things like the other elective courses where kids really hit their stride and find out what they love in life, okay? You know, I'm a professional educator, but I don't recall a whole lot from algebra. That might be like, you know, I don't know, blasphemous, but, and I love Mr. Cole, he was a great guy, okay? But we have to look at what education means. For some kids, the only reason they come to school is because they can play football on Friday night. For some kids, the only reason they come to school is because they play in the band. For some kids, they come to school because their first hour teacher is the only person that asks them how their day went. Okay? So you can't reduce education in any form to a set of standards and say, well, that's what's going to make it all better. If we just had these standards, man, our kids are just going to fly off the charts, because that's a lie. There are too many variables that are preventing us from being effective, and we just have to minimize the ones that are making us ineffective and maximize the ones that help us. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I've got a couple of concerns. First of all, who owns these companies that are writing our textbooks?
Mm-hmm.
Who's writing this? I guess it's a bunch of hippies from the 60s, and it's been pointed out that Muslims. I agree with you, American education is great, but I believe that whoever's in charge of these textbooks are trying to take America out. And my other concern, you know, this over here, the homeschool, everything on the computers, everybody who's doing homeschool can go over there. I don't trust our government to monitor who's using those computers. Look at the IRS. Look what they're doing. Look at what Obama's administration is doing. I don't trust them. I think they monitor and they want, and I don't trust them. I think they're trapping, and I don't think they like the homeschool. It's too American like. They don't like it. Those are a couple of concerns I've got.
Sure. I appreciate that.
I'm a Tea Party group member, so I'm naturally pessimistic about any federal government program. So just hear me out here. I'm going to take exception with a couple of things that you said, and I know those are your opinions, and I'm fine with that. But you say that this is not a mandatory program, but President Obama indicated that he wants to hold back Title I funding from any districts that don't participate in Common Core. Sounds pretty mandatory to me. Also, you also said that it's not a federal education program. And from the perspective of where they're starting with math and English, I think most people would buy in that we want our kids to be taught well in math and English. Yeah. Where it gets a little squishy here is when you start getting into things like science and history, because they do revisionist history, and they have a very strict thing in terms of what you can believe and what you cannot believe with regard to some science curriculum. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. Yeah. And I'm old enough, I've been around long enough that I've seen a lot of federal programs come and go. And, you know, all you need to do is look around. You got the U.S. Postal Service, you've got Amtrak, you've got the war on poverty, Lyndon Johnson's war on poverty. You've got a bankrupt Social Security system, or almost bankrupt. You got almost a bankrupt Medicare and Medicaid system. And in national education, there was a program back in 1958 called the National Defense Education Act. Mm-hmm. We've also heard about No Child Left Behind, and now we're being asked to support Common Core, which is another new program that has never even been piloted. So how do we know it works? And they're estimating that's going to cost the state of Michigan $16 billion to implement that in this state. That's our tax dollars. Sure. How do you get me, a pessimist, to agree that Common Core is the right thing to do for our kids and for our state?
Do I have to do that before 9, Terry?
Pardon me?
Do I have to do that before 9?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
No, listen, you asked some legitimate questions. The part about the mandate piece, if essentially what happened is we had the No Child Left Behind set of standards that states could apply for a waiver from those standards, and as part of the package, for getting the waiver from the feds was an adoption of the Common Core. So I agree. I don't like the way it came about, but that's neither here nor there in the sense that I think we're charged with looking at, okay, 46 states have adopted this. Many locals have taken aggressive steps to implement the Common Core fully. So what have states and locals spent already? Okay, that's one question. And I'm not saying you stop funding it just because, or you support funding it just because we've spent money already. You don't want to throw bad money after, or good money after bad. I get that. I'm not saying that as a rationale to continue doing it. But you've got states and local districts that are very vested in this because they bought a hook, line, and sinker, and for the past couple of years have been implementing it, spending millions of dollars to do it, who are now on hold in a holding pattern with really no direction, okay? So that's why there's so much angst on the other side of this issue, Terry, as it relates to wanting to continue the implementation, because you're right, we don't know if it works or not, okay? So I can't speak to the empirical evidence that says Common Core is this, utopian way that we're going to somehow solve all the ills of the American education system. I'm not going to sit here and say that because I didn't write the Common Core. I'm not here as a Common Core cheerleader. All I'm saying to you is I see some value in it. I certainly believe that to vet it like we're doing now in local communities like ours, I think the legislature has the right to vet it, to see what they're going to spend their money on, to have public forums, to have hearings, Senate and House education committees. All those things are good things. What I'm saying from my perspective is I see the uniformity as a possible benefit. Do I recognize the federal control component as a means or a way to resist what's happening? I certainly understand that. In the list of programs that you read off that are so hugely successful, it's hard to debate that, okay? That being said, a healthy skepticism of this is what will help us vet it and most appropriately. But my challenge right back at everybody in here, and this is to me too, okay, is are you that familiar with the curriculum that your children are currently engaged in? Good. Well, I know you are. Many of your concerns and criticisms are things that are happening minus the Common Core. Okay? So I don't want to paint this as the villainous devil in the room. It's the Common Core, the Common Core. Your concerns about textbooks your kids are exposed to or things they're not being taught are things that should be concerning to you and on your radar with or without this issue of the Common Core. So take the issue of the federal government out of the picture in terms of this debate. If you're concerned about undue influence or an omission of certain historical facts or things that you hold near and dear, if you're concerned about those things, be concerned about them minus the Common Core. That's all I'm saying.
That's fair. Jan, do you mind coming up here?
We have not taken steps as of this point to do it because of we were not a district that dove in, and so to me, I have no horse in the race, as it relates to a financial commitment. Have we investigated what it means, what it looks like, what it would cost to change? And we've done our due diligence in that regard, but we've not spent millions of dollars to wholesale change. No.
Okay, we have a question here from Bill.
Yep.
Yeah, Matt, first off, I want to thank you again for coming out. And as somebody who has a graduate from Lapeer Schools and a daughter who's going to be a senior this coming year, and who's been in the process for a long time, going to the high school consolidation, how many town halls did you do?
Oh,
20.
Yeah, 29 town halls.
I definitely can appreciate that. And the fact that as long as everybody understands that it doesn't matter which district that you're in, that our superintendents, they will be dealing with whatever the legislature sets forth. They're not making policy. But dealing with that, first off, you mentioned that half credit of civics. I would sure like to see that back. Maybe we can add that because the actual, we get that. But where would you, first off, for anybody that doesn't know, if you've got a smartphone, and I got this from a very conservative senator in our legislature, there is an app for that. If you type in Common Core,
Yep.
there
Yep.
is an app for that.
Yep.
Senator Pat Colbeck told me that, showed me that about a year and a half ago. Very interesting. Go and look at it. Folks need to remember that, and you know, when you're talking about its local control, school board meetings, they have them twice, most districts have them at least twice a month.
Yeah.
If you're not attending, make sure that you do. There is nothing more important or you know, there's nothing more important than our children. And when these things are going on, the talk about textbooks, things are going on, most of the time, nobody's there. And it's not that people aren't making it available, it's that for the most part that we're just not really paying attention to what goes on, and it's very difficult to do. But regarding the Common Core, what resources do you suggest for people to get informed on, you know, what is being taught? Because they're talking about math and science now. There's talk about interjecting later at some point you know, additional things that. But what sources might you recommend for people to go and get the information that might help them make a decision?
Well, certainly one of the biggest resources you mentioned is the Common Core app. But there are several, and here's the hard part about this. The best resources on this issue are slanted in two particular ways. Either the Common Core is, you know, awful, or the Common Core is the greatest, you know, it's the second coming. Okay, it's really hard to find good resources down the middle. So, you know, someone like me in the education world, I can give you the alphabet soup of, you know, go to the MASSP.com, go to MASA.com, go to MASB.com, but I'm already telling you what you're going to find. Okay. I don't know what resources that you've that are critical of the Common Core. I've looked at a few myself. There is a website, and the name escapes me, but essentially the keywords are the 5 myths of the Common Core. And it does a really good job of explaining some of the top issues and why there's resistance, the burning ones, and then why there's a reason to support it. So if you're looking for kind of a down-the-middle approach, the top 5 myths of the Common Core is a good one on Google that you can get to. There is no absence of resources on Google about the Common Core. I mean, it's 10 pages at least of resources on Common Core. So that's one of those things that, you know, I'm hesitant to point you in a particular direction because I don't want you to think that I'm endorsing this in any way. I'm simply a state educator who's a local guy looking at this issue just like you, trying to make a decision to lead the district, lead our board, and have discussion about this. So I'm not here. I didn't write the Common Core. You know, I think what we do is great for kids. Personally, the Michigan Merit Curriculum is a significant step in getting our kids a more rigorous approach to education. But at the same time, I think that the uniformity offers some benefit. And that's all I'll say about it. Got one more? Okay.
My name's Ben Graham. I was homeschooled all the way through, so I'm a little bit skeptical of public education. But my question is about the curriculum aspect that a lot of supporters of Common Core say doesn't exist. A lot of people have said that on the other side they say, we've spent a lot of money implementing Common Core, millions and millions of dollars, and you talked about that.
Yeah.
What are they spending that money on? Curriculum that is adapted to Common Core. So there is curriculum that is adapted to Common Core, and there is not. So it does shape curriculum, does it not?
It's not, because the choice still exists about what to choose.
Adaptive curriculum that adapts to Common Core, and there is not.
Well, the point is you have standards right now that curriculums are based on, written by ACT, for example. Okay, so ACT's developed a set of standards that tells districts, if you want to be successful on this particular assessment, this is some identified standards you should achieve, and here are some resources. So that issue is not unique to the Common Core, that there's a set of standards and there are some suggested resources that you can use. But your wording is accurate. Your wording is accurate to say that are there resources out there that help districts find tools they can use that meet those standards requirements. Here's the difference, though. The difference is the local district still gets to pick what they are. So whether we assign ourselves to the Michigan Merit Curriculum, the Common Core, or Mrs. Johnson's homeschool curriculum, we can pick that too. That's a choice we have, okay? There's going to be companies that emerge to provide resources to meet that, right? Because it's a financial, this is a lot to do with money and a lot to do with politics, okay? There's a lot of money to be made right now for companies, textbook companies, resource companies, curriculum writing companies that are looking at these standards right now and saying, I bet I can make a lot of money writing a curriculum for this, okay? That is true whether it was a state-created curriculum or a federal one, but a good point nonetheless.
All right, that is going to be the end of our question and answer time.
Okay.
And we would like to thank you, Mr. Wandrie, for coming and for your time.
Thank you.
I think I can speak for all of us to say that we're very grateful for the work that you're doing in our county and on behalf of our children. If you'll stand with me, we're going to close in prayer. I think we're all very acutely aware this evening of the challenges that are presented to us, and I believe that there have been some action steps laid out that we can take ourselves individually here in Lapeer County. Sometimes we feel like our hands are tied at a federal level because so many things happen there that we really seem to not be able to control. But here in Lapeer County, I feel like we are very powerful, and that each one of us have things that we can do. So if we can leave tonight knowing that there is something that I can do, whether it's attending a local school board meeting, or getting involved, or running for a local office, or becoming a precinct delegate, or coming back next month, first Tuesday of every month. We are always grateful for active citizens in Lapeer County. So let's bow our heads and thank the Lord. This is from Reverend Jerry Creel. O Lord God, I thank you that we can take a moment to acknowledge that there is one that is greater than all the governments and power of man. Thou art worthy to receive glory, honor, and power. Lord, as you guide the course of all creation and the events of mankind throughout history, may we willingly be in submission to your mighty hand. Fill us with love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, and temperance. Lord, raise up leaders here that you can show yourself strong in the behalf of them whose heart is perfect toward you. Give us your wisdom to solve our problems. Give us your power to overcome our enemies. Give us your compassion to meet people's needs. In the name of my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, who gives me freedom from the bondage of sin, liberty to stand for what is right, and the reason to live. Amen. Good night, and we'll see you next month.